We've got a good crowd here, guys. Give them a round of applause. So welcome back to UVU.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. I've been plugging you as a UVU alum, but we've got to kind of come clean and talk a little bit about your story of coming here to UVU. I was telling the truth, but I wasn't telling the whole truth. So let's start that with your let's oh, here, let me turn this light off there. So, is that better? Yeah, that'd be good. So tell us about UVU, coming out to UVU, and your story a bit.
Well, there's a terrible echo.
You might need to put on headphones. I don't know.
All right, I'll
okay.
I actually was I had left the entertainment business and was setting off on a new adventure as a commercial airline pilot. And at the time, it was Utah Valley State College, and they had a sort of a cutting-edge, state-of-the-art online aviation science degree program. And I did my entire degree here in my house, and then came up to Oregon. Graduation, I want to say it was 2003 or 2004. I think it was 2003. So it's been a couple of years.
So you were a commercial pilot major here.
I was.
And you did online, you said? Was it like partial online, partial here?
It was all online.
It was all online. Oh.
It was all online. The whole thing. I mean, I never came to campus for graduation.
Wow. Oh, so you did come here to graduate?
Oh yeah. And put on the green and yellow robe and walked. And it was strange because I feel this like the diploma up on the wall at Utah Valley State College. My bachelor's degree says Utah Valley State College, and yet I didn't spend any time on the campus. So it's weird because I feel this connection to the school, and yet, I never spent time there.
Yeah, when we were talking before, he was dropping these colloquials like, yeah, I was down on the I-15 and things like that. Well, we love to claim you, man. We're gonna just say you're one of our proud. We're just proud of our alumni.
But I am. And I did my work there, and even though I wasn't sitting in a classroom, I did 3 full years of work, and did a final paper, did my assignment. I mean, I did the sort of the regular course load. My interactions were. I was trying to remember the other day because I was like, we didn't have video conference like this, but I remember conferencing with my teachers, and it was just a different way of learning, but it was still a full sort of comprehensive education, and I got a great education there. I learned a ton.
So, well, there you go. And are you still flying?
Only for fun.
Are you still flying?
Only for fun.
Okay. Well, this film is so beautiful. It's just tragic and beautiful, and just a real tear fest, and I'm really proud to show it. Tell us a little bit about the 2 things I'm most interested in are just the story, where it came from, and how it kind of developed, and then the casting, which is so phenomenal. I'd love to hear about that as well.
Well, I had it's funny because Utah Valley has a weird, interesting connection to how the story developed, in that I graduated there, got my degree, and then eventually I left the entertainment business for real and thought I was never going back, and was a commercial airline pilot. And I started writing a script. I'm not kidding when I said I wrote the majority of it on autopilot, sitting up, on the flight deck. I started writing, and that script became a film called The Space Between.
So you just cut out. Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that film became a movie that was called The Space Between.
Okay.
That I shot in 2008 and 2009. and the backdrop of that was 9/11 with a flight attendant and a young boy who was traveling unaccompanied on the morning of 9/11. And so my commitment experience represents
Mm-hmm.
and the success of that movie, I had an opportunity to go make something else. People that kind of believed me and said, "What do you want to do next?"
Right.
And I didn't have the story. And so I kind of put the word out to some people that I knew, and I said, "Look, I'm looking for something character-driven. I'm looking for something on not." And
I'm sorry, Travis, you are cutting out, so I missed that last part again. You were looking for something that what?
Is character-driven, and it could be shot on a smart budget.
Right.
And my music, my dad wrote this movie about 25 years ago, 30 years ago. Do you want to read it? What's it about? It's about a gay hairdresser in New York and a 6-year-old special needs kid that he tried to adopt. And I went, oh, you know, it's not the pitch of, you know, it's not the best pitch. It's a subject matter. Read it. And I read it, and I kind of fell in love with Rudy as a character. Rudy was very different than the Rudy that Allan ends up playing, but I fell in love with this bold, strong, gay man living in New York City at a time when it was not as acceptable to be bold, brash. And so I said, let me take that character, let me start playing around with that character. So I got the script and then crafted the Paul character, and their story developed, and then took the boy from a 6-year-old and created the character that Isaac ultimately played. So it was for the time I finished it was probably about 6 months, and ultimately getting to the truth of what I wanted to say about some stuff that was very personal. I'm a straight man. There are certain things that I just naturally are not experiences, not things that I would naturally normally connect with, and yet there are elements of Paul and Rudy's story that are very, very personal. Things that happen in my life or my children that I think transcends sexual orientation, transcends some of the other things that we know, and becomes, and I hope makes it a little bit more universal. Somebody who has given that love thwarted.
Uh-huh.
So that was the development of the process of the project, and then I actually called Allan to talk to him about Ricky Martin. True story. And
you called Allan Cumming to talk about Ricky Martin? Who did you?
I called his agent. I was calling his agent to talk to him about Ricky Martin because I was thinking who could play Rudy. I wanted to cast somebody who I did not want to cast a straight actor to play a guy. I wanted to cast, and Ricky has this sort of long history of stage, and I thought, well, he's I hope there's no huge Ricky Martin fans, and I hope Ricky's not in the audience ever. I know he's not, but
right here.
I don't think he's the most talented actor, but I thought there's something of interest. And so when his agent said, well, he's booked for the next 56 years, he's doing this and that, and then, and he said, tell me about the character. And I told him, and he said, that's Allan Cumming. And I went, sometimes it takes somebody else to hit you over the head with a hammer, and he hit me over the head with a hammer. And I said, you're right, it is Allan. And it just so happened that I knew his manager quite well, and she got the script, I think that afternoon. Allan read it a day or two later, and we were on a video conference like this a day or two later, and and away you go.
Well, great. I mean, he's amazing in it. And tell me about Isaac, about casting Isaac and working with Isaac.
So Isaac, the original Marco was very nasty and talked a lot and cussed a lot, and I had this notion of who Marco would be, and I saw a tape of Isaac, and we had looked at a lot of kids. I had looked at kids that were legitimately special needs, Down syndrome. I had seen lots and lots of videotape of young actors going "Ah," and doing that thing, and it was just, not only was it offensive, but it was awful to watch. And so, and then little Isaac popped up on my screen, and I went, "Huh, who's it?" And he smiled at the end of his audition. He went, that smile that he gives, and I went, "Well, that's interesting." So we went down and we met him. He lives here locally, and I was trying to get him to play a character, and my wife, who's my producing partner, pulled me aside very smartly, and she said, "Why don't you?" She talked to me about the movie The Blind Side, and how there was a power in the Michael Oher character in that he didn't say a lot. So we were, as an audience, we were wondering what's going on inside this guy's head, and it forced us to sort of stay with him. And so we started playing around with the notion of Marco being much more silent, and Marco not saying as much. And again, sometimes it takes, sometimes you have great ideas, and sometimes you need somebody to kind of hit you over the head with a hammer. And in that case, both who Isaac actually is in real life and who, it sort of hit me over the head, and I went, "Oh, that's the way to play this." And it's actually a smarter, more powerful way to play it than the way I'd originally imagined it.
And did you work with him mostly in an improvisational sort of way, or how did you?
No. It's all. Here's the. Almost everything is scripted that you see in the final film. It's funny. It's been a couple years, literally, since I've seen the movie, so I'm kind of like literally scrolling through the movie in my head. It was all scripted. There was one that was not scripted, turned into my editor, Tom Cross. So I don't know if you know Tom, but Tom won an Oscar for Whiplash.
Sure. I was gonna. That was my next question.
Yeah. So we were in the edit room, and the scene where Isaac sees his room, Marco sees his room for the first time.
Right.
Isaac turned around and he started crying.
Huh.
And I walked in and I said, "What's going on, bud?" And he goes, "I'm just so happy for Marco. He has a room."
Huh.
That was Isaac, the real, kid. And so I said, "Keep the cameras rolling." And I said, "Allan, step in and comfort him." And that moment of Marco seeing his room and crying, and Allan stepping in and comforting him, that became an improvisation. That came out of Isaac feeling that moment for his character and understanding what that meant for Marco.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So tell me, you've got Tom Cross as your editor and Rachel Morrison as your DP.
Right.
So those are some heavy hitters. Just tell me about your team and how you were, if you'd worked with them before, if you were introduced to them. If you don't know who those guys are, Tom Cross edited Whiplash, La La Land. He's Damien Chazelle's editor.
First Man, and he edited First Man. And Tom and I just had lunch about 3 weeks ago, and I was like, "So Tom, what are you working on next?" He goes, "I'm going over to England to cut the Bond movie." I'm like, "Shit," Yeah, he is a world-class editor.
Sure. And then Rachel did Mudbound, right? Wasn't that?
Was nominated for the Oscar, first female cinematographer.
Nominated for as DP, and then just shot. What did she just shoot? Something huge.
Black Panther.
Oh yeah, that little movie called Black Panther.
Little movie.
Yeah.
So here's what's crazy. So Tom and I had cut The Space Between, the 9/11 movie. We cut together, and when I first met Tom on The Space Between in 2008 or 9, so this is about 10 years ago, Tom was an assistant editor. Right. He was bumping along. He was in his 40s at the time. He'd been a long-time assistant editor, and he was one of those guys that he just loved cinema. And like a lot of really, really talented people, he had done some additional editing on Crazy Heart, the Jeff Bridges movie. That's when I met him, right after he'd done Crazy Heart, and he'd done some additional editing, but that meant they hand him a few scenes and let him cut a few things. He's not really. And so Tom and I just bonded over a love of cinema. We bonded over a love of cinema as an art form versus a commerce, even though we understand the commerce of it. And I said, come cut this movie. And so that was his first feature editing job. And that's not to pat me on the back. It's really to pat him on the back. He earned it. And So then when it came time to do the next film, obviously I hired Tom. It was the first person I hired. And then my line producer suggested that we hire Reed Moreno. And Reed, I think now is best known. I think she's Handmaid's Tale.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, she's the director, and she came from the DP world and was a very successful up and coming DP. And she said, "Well, listen, I'm booked, but I've got this friend named Rachel, and she has more talent than me. She's just never had the break. She's only done one feature, but you should really meet her." So I met her, and she had done this one like broad comedy feature that had like, and I was like, And yet there was something about Rachel that I loved her sense of style and cinema, and so I hired her. And so you have to understand, this is 2011, 2012. These are two, extremely world-class talented people who've never had a break. And so at the time, they were like a million other DPs running around LA with a feature or two under their belt, an independent feature. And I saw something in both of them that you just kind of knew that they were. And so I remember when we were editing our movie, Rachel came to me and said, "Hey, listen, I got offered this job on this movie up in Oakland. I don't know if I'm going to take it because I just don't know if I can handle it. I just don't know if I want to do another, low budget, gritty indie." And she was weighing it out, and yet she said, "I love the director. She's great." And obviously it turned out to be Ryan Coogler, and that turned out to be Failed Station. And there's a great benefit to us as filmmakers to work with talent like that, and then there's a great benefit to talent when you have somebody who finds talent who is loyal and says, "Hey, you're going to come do Black Panther with me," even though we just, we did a little $700,000 movie. Now we're going to do a $200 million movie, and so that's the way you want that process to work. So the next movie that I'm shooting, unfortunately, I won't be able to get Rachel and Tom. I'm going to have to, have him come and do some additional cutting, just sort of help me with the next right at the end. He's booked a year, 2 years in advance now. So they're in a different league now, which is great for them.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. Well, guys, if you have questions, why don't you line up right here and please come. These guys are going to come. They're going to tell you their name, and hopefully they have a lot of questions. Sometimes they're shy. But,
okay.
So, and we'll flow back to you. And you are every now and then cutting out. So like I mentioned, so just guys, if there's something that, just let them know, because it's not bad. It's just every now and then. No,
yeah. My name's Wes.
Hey, Wes.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for doing this with us. I just wanted to touch on the editing. So how you guys opened the film, it was with his final day, walking around outside on the bridge.
Yes.
What was kind of the decision to kind of have those two bookends? Was it kind of like a Hobbit kind of thing where, it started and ended where you started kind of thing? Or what was kind of the idea behind that? Or was it just, it just made sense in the end?
It's a great question, and again, working with a world-class talent like Tom, the original script opened. It said "Fade in interior nightclub." Rudy and his bandmate, Rudy and his guys start to dance, and they start the song. That's how the movie opened.
Okay.
We shot this glorious opening shot with these boas opening up and Rudy stepping through, and through the writing process. There are 3 writing processes, as you probably know.
Yeah.
Me sitting alone, there's us on set working together, and then there's the editing, which is rewriting. And so I ultimately decided that that end was a powerful way, because we felt like to start the audience with a sort of a flamboyant large drag queen number and then kill the kid at the end kind of didn't set the audience up. You know, you think it's going to be a dramatic story. So that led to that decision, and I think it was the right way to go. And then something very, very interesting happened. We cut right inside the shot. If you remember correctly, the final version, we cut to Paul sitting in the car, looking over and going, should I go in or should I not go in? And he chooses to go in.
Okay.
That came out of doing an entire in which Garrett's character was the lead of the film. Literally, we just and what we found was the shot of Garrett sitting in the car at 5:30 in the morning at the end of a 12-hour night, where he was tired, and he looked out the window at the club. We were in some street. He looked out the window, looking around to see if there was an AD, so he could figure out if he could get the hell out of the car or if he had to stay there any longer.
Yeah.
And I went, huh, what about that? And so then we went out, we shot a pickup shot of the exterior of the club. And now we've got an establishing shot. We've got a guy sitting in a car trying to make a decision. And we felt it was just a more interesting way to get into Rudy's world.
Yeah.
And all of those editorial decisions came way after that. That's a great question. Thank you, Brett.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's really cool how you like describe that, because I mean, it's just kind of an ever-changing process, and especially with editing, you're making the story again and again and again, and editing is the final stage. And so I thought it was kind of cool how you guys just implemented that. I thought it was a nice touch. But yeah, really great film, brilliant writing, and you guys did a great job. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Wes.
Yeah. All right. All right. Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah. My name is Bryce, and I just wanted to say, fantastic movie, and don't take this the wrong way, but damn you for, one, making me weep, and two, making me realize I need to be a better filmmaker. That's what we strive for, right? Yeah, let's see if I can. So, not to assume any opinion that one may have going into the movie, coming out, but as director, when it comes to subject matter like this, and dealing with characters in the script that are on the opposite side of the arguments being made or the voices that are trying to be heard, how do you direct those characters if they have attitudes or traits that are counterproductive or counterintuitive to what you may be feeling, or what your opinion may be?
Well, you know, I think we all benefit from being self-critical, not in a bad way, but in a good way. And one of my self-critiques when I watch the movie, to be honest with you, is playing a bit too, mustache twirling bad guys in this. And if I could go back and redirect it, I would shade those characters, and I would direct those actors, and it would probably start in the writing process, and I would be a bit less on the nose with some of them. I think some of them it works. I think the cop in the beginning it works very well, but I think Chris Mulkey's character, the DA, it got very sort of black hat, white hat, and I just, we do what we do, and then afterwards you sort of sit down and you have a beer and you look and you go, I might have done that different. So I think it's essential to remember for both your heroic characters, your good guys, and your bad guys, that there are shadings and gradients, that there is good and evil in both, that there is good and bad in both. And I start shooting something again. I'm shooting something again this spring and summer, and there's a character who is railing against sort of modern society and what about the way I think? Why is the way that I think being trampled on? Because and I was talking to the actor about it, and I said, and this comes out of an understanding of having, I think, done it the wrong way. I said, you have to understand what's going on. This woman's scared. This woman's life has changed. Her world has changed. The United States has changed. The internet's changed. All of these things. So I think it's important to make those characters 360 degrees, no matter how small or how big the character is. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes absolute sense. And I love how you said you have to be self-critical. Yeah. I mean, watching this movie, I felt that the characters were very real. That we didn't get a lot of that mustache twirling that you may be. Yeah, exactly. And that question really came from, if I was in that situation, I would be petrified that I would have them fall into those black and white camps. And kudos, because it's amazing to see. It hits you so much harder when you feel like you can be in that situation, or you can understand their situation and why they behave this way. You don't hate them, but you don't necessarily love them. They're human, and that's all we can hope for.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Hey, I have to ask, are you from Montana?
I am. I'm not. Well, my father grew up in the Hamilton, Darby area, and I've lived there off and on the summers my entire life. So it's a second home at this point. I love it.
Got it. We're gonna be shooting some stuff up in Montana this spring and summer. So.
Oh, this spring and summer. I'm gonna be up there that spring and summer. You still looking for crew?
Haven't even started. You just got a job, my friend. We're gonna. Do you know the Browning area?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have Duane get me your information, and we'll connect.
You got it. Thank you so much.
All right.
And I'll give you my recommendation. Highly recommend.
Perfect. I look forward to meeting you in person. Thank you very much.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey there.
My name is Grant, and I was wondering, so I should say, I have a lot of special needs friends, and I have family with Down syndrome and a lot of friends with Down syndrome. I just want to know what it was like directing a kid with Down syndrome, because I know that a lot of my friends and a lot of my family with it, the emotions that they have are under a very thin surface, but sometimes that thin surface is super unbreakable.
Yes.
So like, how do you communicate what you want from them while also like not making them feel like they're uncomfortable, or like, how are you able to direct her but also be the kid's friend?
Well, I had to establish a trust and a rapport and a love with Isaac, and to this day, I love that kid, and he loves me, and I adore his mom, and so that work began off screen, so that he knew me and trusted me. And then Isaac is a very, you describe it beautifully. It's a thin screen, pierced or clam shut. Isaac he's a very emotional, sensitive kid. And when I came to the role, he said, the dream of my life just came true. This kid he came into the world like, you might dream of being a filmmaker. I dreamed of making films. He came into this existence dreaming, starring in films. He sees himself as a movie star. Mm-hmm. Moves through the world. And so he understood the process. He was infinitely predictable. He was sensitive. As I said, in that scene, he brought an emotion to that scene that I didn't write. I couldn't have written. He just brought it. And there were a few times where I had to work a little bit harder to get to him, and it was generally later in the day when he was tired.
Yeah.
He started running out of steam. To be honest with you, that's easier to deal with than most actors just become assholes. Normal people, it's kind of rude and grumpy, and that's a tough time to do anything.
Right.
For him, sometimes I had to pull a little bit harder, and a couple times I had to say to him, "Buddy, I just need one more. If you can just give me one more." You could see him, then he would, and anyway, I hope that answered your question. He was an exceptional actor.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hello, I am.
Hey, what's your name?
Jenner.
Hey, Jenner.
Hi. So my question is, with this film, what is if I can only take one thing out of this film, just one thing, what would it be?
Are you looking for one word, one sentence, or one theme? Because I can give you one. You ready? This is what I would say. I say everybody has the right to give and receive love. Everybody has the right to be loved and to give love. And I think so that's, if I had to whittle it down to sort of one little statement, to expand upon that just a little bit, there are people that believe that they have the corner on the right market, on the just market, on the God market. They believe, I don't think that they know the right way to do it, and anybody who's not doing it their way, I think they don't give them the honor and the right. So there have been a lot of people throughout history, specifically in the gay community, in the homosexual community. There have been people that have been denied the right to give love to children, and children that have been denied the right to have the love of a parent, because there were people that believed that their lifestyle was immoral and evil. For me, I think that's wrong.
I don't know what to say. I'm socially awkward.
Look, here's the thing, man. So I had a situation, and now is where I'll make it. I'll tell you the sort of the personal side to that. So I have a 24-year-old daughter. I have two younger kids, but I have a 24-year-old daughter, and her mom and I, at a certain point, determined that we weren't going to be married anymore, and she was very young. And there was a time in my young daughter's life, it was a long period of time where we were insanely close and completely connected. And then there was a time in which things were said about me, actions were taken to thwart my relationship, and it had a profound impact. So when Lonnie in the lawyer's office says, when he says, "What do we do now?" and Lonnie says, "Nothing you can do. Mother wants the kid. Mother gets the kid. Best you can hope for is that the child grows up and one day comes back to you." That's a very personal line for me. That comes from a very personal place. And I talked a little bit earlier about sort of my personal connection. I'm not gay. I've never been through a custody battle like that. And yet I understand what it means to have a child taken from me. And the time I determined that I wanted to write this script was on my daughter's 16th birthday, when she had a sweet 16 party was hosted for her. And I, as her father, was not invited. And I sobbed in my closet here in my bed, next to my bedroom. I sobbed on the floor while my wife held me. I'm talking sobbing like, you know how you sob when you're a little kid and you can't stop crying? Sobbed like that. And I understood at that moment why I wanted to make this movie and why this movie meant something to me. Not because I want to be the champion for gay adoption rights, even though I believe in it. Not because I want to be the champion, the hero for special needs, even though I support and have been a strong proponent and supporter of special needs and equality, but because on a very personal level, I understood what it meant to have a child, in a sense, pulled from me. So if it's one thing, everybody should be allowed to give and receive love. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
I didn't know if there were any women at this screening.
There are. There's a few out there.
Hi there.
Hi, my name is Madison. I don't know if you're the right person to ask this, but this more from like an acting standpoint.
Yeah.
How hard was it for you to pull the actions out of those actors? I know these are phenomenal actors and they've had a lot of experience with this, but how difficult was it for you to get those reactions that you wanted, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. At times, very, very tough. There were certain actors. There's certain actors that are exceptional. Allan's an exceptional actor. Garrett is an exceptional, world-class actor. And so for people like that, they end up doing things that I, as the writer director, can't quite. You don't even think, oh wow, I wouldn't have thought to do it like that. So at times they're bringing things that elevate the material. At times they're making choices that I, as the writer and director and sort of the overarching vision of the project, go, that's great, that's brilliant, but that's not what I want. And they were very receptive and are very receptive to direction. Actors ultimately want to be directed. They don't want to be just let loose in the play yard to run crazy. And then there were certain actors, I mean, you know, try not to talk too far out of school, but Frances Fisher, who played the judge, I've known Frances for a while. She came to play the judge. She showed up ill prepared. She didn't know her lines. We had to do it line by line by line. At that point, it's painful. It's awful. It's a miserable way to direct, because then you're just trying to simply capture a moment so that you have something to cut together, and that's no fun for anybody. So having spent from the time I was 7 to the time I was about 32, I was a professional actor. You know, I understand the importance of showing up, knowing your lines, prepared, and yet open and receptive to, if the overall visionary of the project says, that's great, I appreciate that decision, but I'm going to steer you this way. Being willing to work with that person, because maybe they know something about something that you don't know. And I'll tell you one quick little funny story. I did a movie called Girl Interrupted. When I was working in front of the camera, I did a movie called Girl Interrupted with Angelina Jolie and Winona Ryder, and James Mangold was our director. He's the guy's just a killer director. And there was a moment when all the ladies on the set started going, this movie, this doesn't work, this scene doesn't work, this scene doesn't work. And watching an extremely prepared director in Jim Mangold, he sat down and he walked them through the entire sequence. And by understanding, by being the sort of the knowing what the overall story was and the way the film was cut together, he was able to sort of calm their hysteria about saying this doesn't work, to explain to them, no, it does work, and if you trust me, do it the way I asked you. But I think it's important as an actor to have a point of view, come in with a perspective, come in with a take on it, and then be open to that shaping and moving.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so my name's Garrett.
Hey.
So my question might be answered very, very quickly, but basically I'm a storyboard artist, and so I was kind of just wondering if you worked with one, and kind of like if you did, what the process was with kind of working with them in that experience.
We did not, this film did not have, it's kind of a cop-out to say we didn't have the budget. I didn't know anybody who did storyboards, and from the moment we met with the first investor, so I finished the script in February, late February. I met with the first investor in March. Oh, it's funny, I met with him March 15th. It's funny, like, what is that, tomorrow or 2 days from now? Met with him March 15th, and we were shooting May 11th. So it was like, I was on such a whirlwind just trying to put all the pieces, because I was a producer as well. I was on such a whirlwind just trying to put all the pieces together, that, to be honest with you, some of the stuff that got short shifted was the visuals. Rachel and I, it was Rachel, my DP. I mean, we were storyboarding like on the fly, like 3 days before we shot. It was such a whirlwind that we just did not. The next picture that I work on, we are going to be doing storyboards. So.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious, just because I want to get info on that. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, I'm Cassidy.
Hi, Cassidy.
I had a couple questions about the directing standpoint.
Yeah.
And I know every film has different challenges that come along with it. And so what were some of the most challenging obstacles that you faced, and how did you deal with it? And then, knowing what you know now, how would you go about that differently, and what would you recommend to other people who run into these same issues?
Mm-hmm. So I briefly touched on one of what I think is the biggest challenges, and that is I stepped on the gas pedal so hard to get the film into production that, as I said, script done late February, meeting with first investor March 15th, and shooting May 11th. It's just such a tight, it was such a tight window to try and fit everything into from a production standpoint. And I feel like I didn't do as much preparation as I would have liked to have done as a director. The previous guy asking about storyboards, I would have liked to have taken 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and literally just focused on the visual style of the movie. Rachel and I think we ended up pulling off something. And when I think about the fact that we pulled it off without really any visual prep, we talked about a few different movies, we looked at a couple different movies, and off we went to shoot. If we had really had the time to really storyboard, really shot list, I think it would have left me free to. It would have left me a lot less stressed the day of, because there were many days where we were finding stuff as we went, and I just don't think that's the best way to work. It also left me the stuff that the 8mm stuff that we shot on the beach, and it's actually a funny story. We shot all this stuff on 8mm, and then Rachel came to me a couple days later. She goes, Trav, and like tail between her legs, she's like, I feel awful. None of it worked. Like the beach stuff worked, but we shot Christmas. So the actors are all upset because they got to put the sweaters on and they got to get back in front of the thing, and it's hot and sweaty. And Isaac comes running and he goes, "It's Christmas again!" And he was so excited, right? But the day that we shot the stuff out on the beach, we had also shot the scenes in the jail, them talking to Mariana about the boy, and I had gotten so sick. I had a ridiculous case of strep throat. The point where I was laying on the ground, I would point at the first AD and they would say action. I would go like this and they would say cut. I couldn't speak. I couldn't stand up. And because I had run so hard, so fast to get the film into production and hadn't taken the proper time to prepare myself, I ran out of steam physically 5-6 days into the shoot, and it took me a couple of days to get back up. So I would strongly suggest being in good shape, having good stamina, getting a good night's sleep, getting a good meal. Those things are important. Having a good pair of shoes sounds crazy, but it's true. And then from a creative standpoint, I think the biggest challenge is, holding all of those individual pieces as you're shooting and holding that overall arcing, the whole story. So the strong suggestion I would give is you have to be so infinitely clear about what your story is, why you're telling the story, what the visual style is. You have to be so clear about almost every single moment in the film. And that frees you up then to explore and find stuff that maybe you wouldn't have expected. So those were all challenges. Those are all things that I will do very differently on the next one.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi there.
I'm Blake.
Hey, Blake.
So you've kind of talked about hiring Allan and kind of him being the perfect role for him, and the process of getting Isaac hired. Now, what about Garrett and really finding the chemistry between those three? Because you really feel it throughout the whole movie, and it doesn't work without him. And I've seen him in things before, and comedic turns or kind of action-y turns, but I think this is the first time I've seen him in such a dramatic role. And I'm just curious of the process of hiring him, if he was an early hire or at what point he was hired on.
No, it's funny. You guys are asking a lot of questions about stuff that is, they're kind of some of the interesting stories of this production. So Allan, as I said, was the first person hired. Actually, Kelly Williams and Don Franklin, they're old friends of mine. Lonnie Washington and the teacher. Kelly was my high school sweetheart, so she was the first person cast. But so we cast Allan, and then we started making offers, thinking, well, somebody will want to. And man, I'll tell you, we made one offer after another, and got no. And I started off with some like dream casting. It's kind of like, I don't know. I guess it's like when I was young and single and I go out to a bar and you walk in at 8 o'clock, you go no, and then by like midnight you're like, well, you start to get a little desperate and you start to maybe be a little bit more open to something you might not have been open to. So I was like, okay, well, and the casting director kept bringing me choices, and they brought me Garrett. And I have to be in complete honesty, I had never seen his work. I'd sort of like fringe stuff, but I didn't really know him. And then they showed me some video of him doing something. I said, nah, that's not like, I don't think that's the guy. And here's what happened. Allan's manager sent me a furious text 5 days before we started shooting, 6 days before we started shooting, 5 or 6. I mean, it was like, we were in crunch time. What the hell is going on? Who's playing Paul? I'm gonna pull him if you don't let me know what the hell's going. And like it was like we're gonna lose our. So now all of a sudden, Garret Dillahunt, this guy I'd never seen act before, seemed like a great idea. Let's make him an offer. So we made him an offer, and he passed. And I just went, oh, God, I don't, you know. So I said, let me get on the phone with him. Man, I got on the phone, and I told him how I had never seen him in a role like this before, and how brilliant I thought he was going to be, and how perfect. And I have done some sales in the past, and I understand. Do you know the term objection handlers?
Not super familiar.
In sales, you figure out what somebody's objection is, and then you handle the objection. They say, well, you know, I don't think I could buy it because I don't have that kind of money. Okay, well, if I could spread the payments out over 12 months, would that work for you? And they go, oh, well, yeah, but I don't like blue. Well, if I could get you a green, would that work for you? So it's an objection handler. Okay. So he started telling me about how he was working on a TV show, and he and his wife were going to go to the Bahamas and take a vacation, and he'd been working. So I did it by objection. I said, so if I could get you and your wife here, what if we could fly your wife here? We could set up a vacation here. And when we were done, I could fly you to the Bahamas. Would that work? And he's like, man, you're good. So we ended up casting him, and I still didn't really know who he was as an actor. I just knew, and man, did I get lucky. Again, it's, you know, having smart people telling you sometimes, hey, by the way, you don't know how good a decision this is. He showed up. We had one day of rehearsal. There was no time for them to bond as a family, which I actually think kind of worked in an interesting way because Paul and Rudy and Mark were kind of thrown together. So these three get thrown together, these three actors. And when I tell you he is one of my absolute favorite actors, period, bar none. I think there's nothing that guy can't do right. When he did that scene in the courtroom, holy shit, the cameras are rolling. Sorry for my language. Cameras are rolling. And he did that speech. And, you know, that's when you just go, thank God I had a good, smart casting director who told me, you're an idiot. This is the guy you should be casting. So that's the story with Garrett. He was, I asked him to marry me, and I had never even really seen his work, but I begged him to come and do our film, and somehow it worked.
So did you film this chronologically? Like,
no.
Okay, so it was, okay.
No. I don't even remember what the hell we shot first. We started in the school. So the very first scene we shot was the previous was it Cassidy before who asked the question about directing? Like, start off, Cassidy, with the easiest shot, first shot of the movie. Start off, because then you go action, cut, print, let's go one more time, cut, print, let's move on. And so we started on the three of them walking down the hallway. There's a camera pushing behind the three of them, and they're walking towards the classroom. I said, let's start with the easiest shot. It's just a walk-in. Nobody's even talking. There's no dialogue. Take 10. I'm like, what is going on? Can you get and it took 10 or 11 takes to get that simple little walk right. And but Cassidy, still start with the easy shot. It should be easy. Anyway, we started in the school, and it was not chronological at all. So the first acting scene I did with the three of them was Marco singing, or them walking in and introducing him to the teacher, to Mrs. whatever her name was.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We have one more.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the last one.
Hey there.
You'll be free soon. My name is Taylor, and I just had a very quick question about what your involvement was with composers, and how, were you very involved, not very involved? Because it was very, I love the film. It was wrenching on the few heartstrings that I have left. And so I just wanted to know your involvement with that.
Yeah, Joey Newman. So Joey is a dear, dear old friend. He and my wife worked together when we were all running around Los Angeles in our 20s and 30s. So I've known Joey for a lot of years. And when I went to make my previous movie, The Space Between, I asked Joey to do the score, and so here's Joey's background. Joey is, if you know the name Newman, if you know the name Randy Newman, if you know the name Thomas Newman, Lionel Newman, Alfred Newman, they are the royalty of Hollywood composers. If you've ever heard bum 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 da 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 da, that's his I think his great uncle, his grandfather. I mean, these are guys who have scored. Thomas Newman has scored American Beauty, and the list goes. These are world, and so he's part of that Hollywood royalty. And kind of like with Rachel and with Tom, where I described earlier, their world-class talent just had never been kind of done that movie that had broken him out the way his uncle and his cousins and, you know, Randy Newman and those type of folks. So Joey came on and did Space Between, did a beautiful job. And then, of course, I went back to him for this. And he's such a smart, intuitive human being, but he's also a smart, intuitive composer. And he's able to take so I guess the answer to the question is I don't tell him it should go blah, 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 blah. I show him the movie, and he comes to me and says, here's what I'm thinking, and he'll play something like on a piano. And he'll temp a little music in, and I'll go, yeah, that's great. And how about this? And so he's very collaborative, and yet he's very certain about what he wants to do. And we had a full orchestra on this, and Joey's able to pull in favors. And we had a full orchestra at Capitol Studios recording for our little tiny movie with Tom. I forget Tom's last name. This guy, he does all the mixing for the Oscar. I mean, we're working with world-class talent because, you know, Joe's so well respected. So he, like all the artists in the film, brings a point of view. Just like I said with the actors, he comes in with a very clear vision, very clear idea of what he wants to do, and then he listens to what I have to say, and then we collaborate together. And what's great is, I'm glad you brought him up, because yesterday we were having a whole collaboration about the new film, because he's just read the script and he's already started coming up with ideas and notions, and the new one has a sort of some Native American elements in it, so we started talking about drums, and you know, so we start talking very early on about thematically, and then he gets to, you know, have a year or so before we're done with it to play around with ideas.
So give them a lot of time, is what you're saying. Because I'm having one composed right now, or two actually, and so I'm like, I've never done this before. So
you're having somebody compose for you, or you are composing for somebody?
No, I'm not composing. No, I have a short film, very, very short, that I want to get composed, and I'm trying to work with people right now. And so I was just like, why not ask? Thank you so much.
Yeah. I think, and I don't know what your process is, and I don't know where you are in the process of your film, and I don't know, but if you're able to share it without music, and let them see how it feels, and what music and what sonic sounds come out of them, the same way an actor, where you show them a script and say, well, how would you play this scene? Same thing with a composer. How do you hear the score going? I certainly think you should have a point of view and a feeling of what you feel like. And one of the other things that is very helpful, and Tom Cross, my editor, was very good at this, finding temp score, going and finding something that is from another movie, but that you as the filmmaker, you as the storyteller says, that's kind of what I was thinking, and that sometimes gives your composer a direction to go. Not to steal that, but to understand tonally, how does that piece of music make you feel? You know, is it pizzicato? Is it a comedy? Or is it, or is it, you know, something soaring, or, you know, and sometimes by giving them temp stuff, this is kind of what I'm thinking, this is the mood, it allows them to riff on that.
Okay, thank you so much. You should become a singer.
Oh, no, I should not. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right.
Okay, Tom, or Travis, I do have, well, you know what, I'm not going to ask this.
You can ask.
Well, I don't want to wear you out, but I also don't want to end on this note. Okay, I've got two questions. One I don't want to end on, and that is, I saw the film at Outfest.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, their first encounter in the car was a little more intense and graphic. Was there something cut out, or am I remembering it incorrectly?
You just filled in some blanks for yourself. I don't know. No. I mean, look, it's interesting because Tom and I, you know, I remember sitting in the editing room, and there were certain things where I was like, do we leave that thing where he slurps his lip? And, you know, I mean, you know, there's some suggestive stuff as to what's going on. To be quite graphic, what's going on in Allan's mouth? Like, does he, you know, is he like, but no, there was nothing more graphic than that.
Oh, funny. I do remember it. But I guess I just, you know, played it out of my own mind. So okay, so we'll finish with Rufus Wainwright. Was that an original song for the end there?
It was.
So we'll end with that.
Rufus, again, an interesting story. So we, my music supervisor, this guy named PJ Bloom. PJ's now, I think he's now like the president of Warner Brothers Music or something crazy like that. He's a high school chum. He's a buddy I went to school with. God, it's such a dated word to say chum, isn't it? Like he's a high school chum. He and I went to high school together, and his father was the writer of the original. When you see written by Travis Fine and George Arthur Bloom, his father is George Arthur Bloom, the writer of the original screenplay from 1984, 3 or 2 or whatever it was written. And so the movie was done, and PJ said, "How would you feel about an original song?" I said, "What are you thinking?" He said, "Well, you know, Rufus and Rufus and Allan are friends." It's funny. I went to Allan's 50th birthday party. He rented out all of the water park at Disney World down in Orlando. I mean, like he rented the whole park for the night. It was like we all went there, and you know, there was open bar and people running around. It was completely and utterly Allan Cumming party. It was fun and hedonistic and funny and sweet and poignant. And Rufus sang that night, sang happy birthday to him. He and Rufus are friends. So I don't think Allan was instrumental, but I think PJ had reached out to Rufus's people and said, would he be interested in, and they sent me this song, and it's called Metaphorical Blanket. And I, you know, again, sometimes you hear stuff and you go, what does that have to do with the movie? I'm so confused what's going on. And yet there was something about the, as I said to the previous lady who asked about music, there was something tonally about it that I went, oh yeah, it kind of, it works and it fits. And so we booked the studio time, and I was in Toronto working on something, and my people, the music people, they were all supposed to meet Rufus there, and they showed up, and he was walking out the door. And because I guess Rufus's take on it was, I'm not looking for anybody's notes or thoughts. I don't want, you know, he really did not want any kind of collaboration. He wanted to record a song for the movie, and off he went. And he did that, and you know, thrilled that he did.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Can you sum up their story in Montana in a brief thing, not wanting to keep you too long?
Yeah.
The upcoming project?
Yeah, it's something I've been working on for 25 years. I've played around with what was originally the story of an artist named George Catlin, who in 1830 went west and to native territories. And
yeah.
And are you familiar with him?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I you know, his story it was of interest to me. And as a young man, it was sort of this white hero dances with paintbrushes. So if I could have just saved one more native, and yet that story is, there's more sides to his story. And the more research I did into him, the more I found there were more sides to his story. And the more research I did, the more I realized I didn't really want to tell his exact story, but his story was a leaping off point. And just as George's script was a leaping off point for me to be sobbing in the closet floor and saying, I know why I want to tell this story and why it's important, I came to understand certain things about Catlin as a human being. And so what grew out of that, Catlin became a fictional character. I took away sort of stripped away his real life. And it's a triptych. It's a three panel piece of film, one set in 1830, one set in 1968, and one set in 2019. And in 1830, a young artist goes west, leaves his family behind, and in native territory discovers the gender fluidity with which the native tribes lived, that was sort of not only normal, but that those folks that were considered to see out of two eyes, which is one eye that sees as a man and one that sees as a woman, and that they were honored and revered. And through that experience, his life has changed. In 1968, a young boy, French foreign exchange student, comes to Barstow, California, and ultimately takes him to Los Angeles. And in the middle of 1968 Los Angeles, this young man who's never been outside of Barstow, his eyes are opened, and he comes to understand that he is free to live how he chooses to live proudly. And this young French foreign exchange student, teaches him that lesson along with some other folks. And then in 2019, a young trans musician who lives in Montana, tries to take his life. And when he's sent into lockup, into 72-hour lockup, post-suicide, the therapist ultimately teaches him the lessons that he needs to learn. But these are lessons that she learned in 1968 and lessons that she learned from an artist from 1830. So all three stories end up being woven together into this triptych. It's titled Two Eyes, because it is about how we all see the world, ultimately, no matter whether we're white, black, Muslim, Buddhist, gay, straight, whatever, we see the world with two eyes. So it speaks to that truth, but it also honors the gender fluidity of Native tribes and the notion that people who are different can be honored and revered and respected for being different, not sort of shunned and cast aside.
Sounds beautiful. Sounds beautiful.
So I'm doing another lighthearted comedy. And my wife, I have to tell you, my wife got through reading this script and she's crying. She's crying. She's like, it's so beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever written. And then she takes this long pause and she says, I have to ask you. I said, what? And she goes, do you need to come out? And I said, no, why? And she goes, what's with the, like, it's another, thematically there, it's not Any Day Now at all, but I'm dealing with characters, some of whom are straight, some of the heroes are straight, some are gay. And I said, this is not me coming out. But it obviously is something that that is important to me, to honor and revere people for their differences and not to treat them as less or worse than their differences. And there's a line in the script where the young trans girl says, I'm supposed to be in the boys section. And her doctor says, yeah, you are. And it's taken 200,000 years for most of us to figure that out, but it's going to take a few more generations for everybody else to figure it out as well. So it plays in that world, and but also plays in the world of honoring and respecting everybody and artists and chasing your muse and finding true love and eternal love. And so it's playing with all those themes.
Can't wait. Can't wait. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'll be sending you Bryce's contact.
Yeah, Bryce. Yeah, come work with us, Bryce.
I'd love to. All right.
All right.
We'll talk soon. Bye.
All right, thanks so much. Bye-bye.